Hello everyone! Recently, our channel took a short break for the Lunar New Year, so we didn't upload any videos. That quiet pause wasn't because we forgot about you, but because the final days of the year passed so quickly, carrying everyone along with countless things that needed to be completed. When the wind began to grow colder, slipping through every small window frame, when soft spring melodies drifted faintly from a neighbor's house, bringing that familiar excitement of the days leading up to Tet, Tiểu San sat alone beside a stack of fresh green dong leaves, carefully spreading each one out in front of her. She awkwardly wrapped her first bánh chung after a long time away from making them. Her hands, usually busy with daily work, now moved more slowly, recalling how to fold the leaves neatly into a square, how to measure the rice so it was full but not overflowing. When the first cake was finished, she placed it on the tray, tilted her head to examine it, and softly laughed at the slightly uneven corners. "It's been so long since I last made them. They don't look very pretty." That smile was not self-criticism, but a gentle kindness she offered herself amid the year-end rush. Ivy had been picked up by her father a few days earlier to spend the year-end celebration with his family. The kitchen therefore lacked the sound of little footsteps running about, and the familiar mom. Whenever the little girl curiously peeked at the boiling pot or asked about the cake being wrapped, the quiet felt somewhat empty. Yet it also created a necessary stillness for Tiểu San to prepare Tet more carefully and thoughtfully. From early morning she had soaked sticky rice in a large basin, each white grain plump and glossy with water. Pork belly was marinated just right enough seasoning so that when cooked, it would release a warm, fragrant aroma. The mung beans were cleaned, steamed, mashed smooth and neatly arranged in a basket, covered with a thin cloth to keep them from drying out. Everything was prepared with care, like a habit deeply rooted in memory. She planned to wrap around 20 cakes, some for the family to enjoy during Tet, some to sell for a little extra income at the start of the year, and most importantly, some to give to both sides of the family as a wish for peace and abundance. Hai arrived a little later than planned. Year-end work at the company was still busy. He had to review the list of Tet gifts for employees to make sure everything was thoughtful and complete. When he stepped into the kitchen and saw Tiểu San sitting among piles of dong leaves, sticky rice and wooden molds, he didn't say much. He simply sat down quietly beside her. "Let me help you." His voice was simple but sincere. Tiểu San handed him the basket of still wet leaves. "Can you wipe these dry for me?" They sat close together in the small kitchen, choosing its coziness over the spacious living room. The air was filled with the scent of fresh dong leaves, sticky rice, and the warmth of the newly lit charcoal stove. For the first time, Hai truly experienced the full process of wrapping bánh chung. Before, to him, it had simply been a dish appearing on the table every Tet. Today, he cut each leaf carefully, folded the edges flat, and listened as Tiểu San guided him step by step. He carefully placed the leaves into the mold, scooped in rice, added mung beans, laid a slice of pork in the center, then covered it again with beans and rice. Each movement was slow and focused, as if afraid of making a mistake. His first cake had slightly uneven filling, the strings not perfectly straight, the corners not quite square. But when he set it beside Tiểu San's cake, they looked at each other and burst into laughter. The sound echoed in the small kitchen, sweeping away the fatigue of a long day. While her hands continued wrapping swiftly, Tiểu San told him the legend of bánh chung and bánh she had heard since childhood. She spoke of the square shape symbolizing the earth, of gratitude toward ancestors, of the indescribable emotion that rose whenever she saw a pot of bánh chung steaming in the final days of the year. For her, bánh chung was not just food. It was memory, homeland, and reunion. Hai fell silent for a moment as he listened. He remembered the years he had spent celebrating Tet far from home. In those unfamiliar cities there had been no scent of dong leaves, no crackling firewood at night, no image of family gathered around a boiling pot. Tet had been reduced to a few congratulatory phone calls and a quiet homesickness lingering in his heart. "It's been a long time since I felt the spirit of Tet this clearly," he said softly, his eyes resting on the pot waiting to be filled. When the cakes were finished and neatly arranged in the large pot, they lit the fire together. Flames flickered, casting a warm red glow across their faces. The water gradually boiled, the crackling of dry wood blending with the wind and the faint drizzle outside, forming a unique symphony of the year's final night. They knew the cakes would need at least 10 hours to cook, perhaps until nearly dawn. Hai went home briefly to help his mother tidy up, then returned to Chu San as promised. They sat by the fire, sharing roasted sweet potatoes fragrant from the embers, sipping tea she had dried from the tea hills months before. The slight bitterness at the tip of the tongue slowly turned sweet in the throat, making the atmosphere even warmer. In the glow of red flames and the soft sound of rain on the roof, they spoke about upcoming plans. About Chu San waking early to harvest carrots in time for the year-end market. About arranging their schedule to visit their hometown, bringing still warm bonchang as gifts for relatives. Each plan was simple, yet carried both of their efforts within it. They also spoke of Ivy, about what she might ask when she saw the pot of bonchang, about the possible questions that might arise when the whole family gathered in their hometown. They avoided nothing. Together, they chose to prepare themselves to face everything with sincerity, believing that as long as they stood side by side, things would eventually feel lighter. The night grew deeper, but the pot continued to boil steadily. Steam rose, carrying the blended fragrance of rice, beans, and pork. Chu San gently warmed her hands over the fire, feeling the heat spread through her. She looked at Hai sitting beside her, quietly adding wood to the flames, and a profound sense of peace filled her heart. Amid the busyness of the year's end and the many plans still ahead, that moment, sitting together beside the pot of bonchang, was enough for them to understand that Tet was not only in the preparations, but also in the quiet companionship shared through hours like these. The next morning, when the pot of bonchang had cooked long enough, Chu San and Hai gently lifted the lid. A cloud of hot steam rose up, carrying the familiar fragrance of sticky rice blended with mung beans and pork belly. The entire kitchen seemed to awaken with that comforting aroma. Carefully, they used large chopsticks to lift each cake out, placing them onto a tray lined neatly with clean banana leaves. The cakes were still steaming, their outer dong leaves now a deeper shade of green after hours of boiling. Chu San arranged them evenly, then placed a wooden board on top and pressed them down with a heavy weight. This would help the rice bind more tightly so that when cut, the cakes would be firm, square, and beautiful. Hai stood beside her, adjusting each one to make sure none were crooked. Morning sunlight streamed through the window, falling gently over the pairs of cakes being pressed, creating a simple yet warm scene. Once the cakes had cooled slightly, they chose the two best pairs, those most evenly shaped and generously filled. Chu San carefully wiped the outer leaves dry, retied the strings neatly, and placed each pair into a paper box she had prepared earlier. She even lined the inside with a sheet of red paper to add a touch of festive spirit. That afternoon, when the sun had softened, the two of them brought the cakes to Chu San's mother and her older brother, Hung, along with his wife, hoaica. The small path leading to her mother's house was familiar, yet it always carried a special warmth. The atmosphere of the year's end felt even clearer as every household busied themselves cleaning, hanging red couplets, and preparing festive meals. Laughter echoed from inside the small house before they even stepped in. Hoaica opened the door. The moment she saw Chu San and Hai standing on the porch, holding the cake box, her eyes lit up. "Oh, you wrapped these yourselves?" Her voice was filled with surprise and delight, causing Chu San to blush slightly. She nodded, a bit shy but unable to hide her happiness. "They're not that beautiful, though." Hoaica took the box and gently opened it. The square cakes lay neatly side by side, strings tied carefully. Hearing the conversation, Hung stepped out from inside the house, curious. He picked up one of the cakes, turning it slowly in his hands, examining each corner. This square is already beautiful. What matters most is the love behind it." His simple but sincere words made Tiểu San smile softly. She knew her brother was not just judging the appearance of the cake, but recognizing the effort and unity behind it. Hoai stood beside her, bowing respectfully to Tiểu San's mother before placing the box carefully on the wooden table in the center of the house. Her mother stepped out from the kitchen. Seeing the two standing side by side, she did not say much. She gently touched the surface of one cake and nodded. Her eyes shone with affection and satisfaction. To her, what mattered was not whether the cakes were perfectly square, but that the young couple had prepared them together, preserved a tradition together, and thought of their family during these final days of the year. Hùng gave Hoai's shoulder a friendly pat, smiling warmly. "Thank you for helping Sam prepare everything so thoughtfully. Seeing you two like this gives me peace of mind." There was not only gratitude in his words, but also trust in his brother-in-law. Hoai nodded gently, his usual calm smile on his face. "We're family. Tet is about being together." His words made the house feel even warmer. Hoaica quickly poured tea for everyone, the soft clinking of cups blending into the gentle hum of a late-year afternoon. The pairs of Chung resting on the table stood as a clear sign that Tet had truly arrived. Tiểu San looked around the house where she had grown up, where her brother and sister-in-law were building their own happiness. She felt the bond between family members, not through grand words, but through small gestures like bringing over a few pairs of cakes wrapped by her own hands. Hoai stood quietly beside her, steady and reassuring, just as he had been from the night by the steaming pot until now. Outside, the afternoon light slowly faded, and the wind brushed softly past the porch. Inside, laughter mingled with conversations about Tet preparations and plans for the coming days. The Chung placed in a position of honor on the table carried not only the flavor of rice and beans, but also the heartfelt affection of the young couple for their family. That moment continued what had begun the night before beside the steaming pot. From the clumsiness of wrapping the first cake to the care taken in selecting the most beautiful pairs as gifts, each step was part of a quiet journey of preserving and sharing. And amid the lively atmosphere of the year's end, everyone understood that what makes Tet truly complete is not just a full table of food, but the full presence of loved ones gathered together. Hoaica gently poured tea into each small cup, thin wisps of steam rising and blending with the soft fragrance that filled the room. The whole family gathered around the familiar wooden table, each in their own seat yet no one feeling distant. The gentle clink of cups touching, the quiet scrape of chairs against the tiled floor, and then laughter following laughter made the atmosphere more lively than ever. The conversation naturally returned to the night before, when Tiểu San and Hoai had sat beside the pot of Chung until nearly dawn. Hoaica curiously asked whether the first cake had truly been as misshapen as Tiểu San described, while Hùng teased Hoai about whether his hands had trembled while tying the strings. Their simple jokes warmed the room in a way that felt uniquely theirs. Hoai recounted how it felt the first time he carefully layered the rice and mung beans into the mold, working slowly, afraid the filling would shift or the shape wouldn't be square. Tiểu San sat beside him, listening, her eyes shining with quiet happiness that such small moments had already become cherished memories. Soon, the conversation shifted to their plans to return to their hometown in the coming days. They discussed whether to leave early or later to avoid the crowds, what to bring, how to arrange their time so everything would feel complete. Hùng mentioned the vegetable beds in the garden, saying that this year the mustard greens were growing well and the carrots were evenly sized. If harvested at the right time, they would be ready for the final market of the year. Hoaica added that a few days earlier, when she watered the vegetables, a cold frost had settled, and she had to cover them carefully to prevent damage. These everyday conversations about cooking, farming, and travel plans might have sounded ordinary, but they quietly wove a strong thread of connection among them. Tiểu San's mother sat listening, occasionally nodding, occasionally smiling. She did not speak much, but her eyes followed each of her children, as if wanting to preserve every moment of this reunion. In that small room, laughter flowed naturally, unforced, effortless. Everything unfolded gently, just like the familiar rhythm of their family life. In that moment, Tiểu San glanced around. She saw her mother pouring more tea, her brother speaking earnestly with hoai smiling softly beside them. A deep sense of fullness rose within her. It did not come from a lavish feast or expensive gifts. It did not come from anything grand or dazzling. It simply came from being exactly where she belonged, from preparing Tet with care alongside the person she loved, from bringing homemade cakes to her mother, and from being welcomed with warm eyes by her brother and sister-in-law. Her mind drifted back to the previous night by the boiling pot, when the fire flickered and the two of them sat close together in the small kitchen. From the initial awkwardness to the quiet joy of finishing the batch of cakes, it had been a short journey, but one that allowed her to feel more deeply the value of companionship. Today, as those cakes rested on the table amid her family's laughter, she understood that what mattered most was not perfect form, but the love wrapped within every layer of rice and every tied string. Outside, the wind was still cold, brushing against the door and making it tremble slightly. The year-end air still carried its chill. Yet inside this house, warmth radiated from the hot cups of tea, from the lively voices, from the shared glances of understanding and care. Tet seemed to have arrived a little earlier, not only through the lingering scent of Chung in the kitchen, but through the complete presence of everyone together. As the afternoon light gradually faded, the small room remained vibrant. Conversations continued, plans extended into the days ahead, but what stood out most was the strong bond being nurtured day by day. And amid all these simple things, their family was still walking toward happiness together, step by step, unhurried yet steady. And so, our little story about a simple Tet season in Tiểu San's family comes to a close here. Amid the chilly final days of the year, with so many responsibilities still waiting ahead, they chose to sit together, to wrap a pot of Chung, to bring a bit of that homemade warmth to their mother, and to share ordinary yet love-filled conversations. Life may still hold many worries and the plans ahead may need more time to unfold, but as long as they can gather like this, Tet is already truly complete. Because sometimes happiness does not lie in grand things. Happiness is preparing even the smallest details with the one you love. It is hearing your family's laughter echo through a familiar home. It is feeling warmth spreading gently through the cold air. Thank you for always accompanying and patiently waiting for our channel during this time. If you are also preparing for your own Tet season, we hope today's story brings you a little warmth and peace. Wishing you all a new year filled with peace, togetherness, and love. See you in the next stories.
Xin chào tất cả mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình. Hôm nay thì mình đưa tới những video tiếp theo của video về câu chuyện của Con ơi đừng có làm như thế, con hỏng cái quạt bây giờ. Về câu chuyện của Tiểu San nhé mọi người. Hôm nay thì mình làm việc hơi khuya, do bữa nay mình nghỉ Tết, xong là hôm nay mình bắt đầu làm lại và mình làm vào buổi tối nên là mình nói hơi nhỏ. Ở bên mình thì châu Á nên là sẽ ăn Tết âm lịch, tức là âm lịch tính theo lịch của mặt trăng. Thì hôm nay thì mới là kết thúc năm âm lịch á mọi người. Còn chủ yếu ở bên phương Tây mọi người thì chắc là sẽ ăn Tết như mình gọi là Tết dương lịch. Bây giờ thì mình mới làm xong video và mình đang hoàn thành các bước edit cuối cùng trước khi đăng tải. Tạm biệt mọi người, hẹn gặp lại mọi người trong những video tiếp theo.